On screen now, we can show you three of the most recent polls about the economy and how about Americans are feeling about it. Everything in red. Our Fox polling disapproves at 59%, Washington Post, ABC News 57%, Wall Street Journal at 54%. It seems like you're pushing a car uphill. And you've got 9 months to turn it around. You know Democrats are juiced. They are ready to vote tomorrow. Do you have enough runway to get this economy where it needs to be before November?
Well, Bill, in some ways we are pushing a car uphill because the Biden administration left us such a disaster of an economy, the highest peacetime debt in American history, skyrocketing inflation. A lot of Americans who had lost $3,000 was that how much the average American had lost in take-home pay. Now, in a year, we've actually seen the average American gain about $1,200 in take-home pay. But if you're sitting at home from the perspective of the Biden administration, you are still worse off than you were when Joe Biden took over. So we are absolutely pushing that car up.
Donald Trump has been awfully quiet since that State of the Union last night, and not the strategic silence kind, the please don't replay that kind. It was rough. Low energy, low spark, low everything. While he was up there struggling through it, millions of people were tuning into the People's State of the Union instead. By the end of his speech, that alternative broadcast had already pulled in over 2 million views. That tells you something. Trump didn't look sharp, he looked drained, he was gripping the podium like it was doing the talking for him. His delivery wandered, sentences started, and then just sort of gave up halfway through. If confidence is contagious, this wasn't it. And since then, nothing. No big social media blitz, no victory lap, just silence. The only message he fired off before the speech was blaming Democrats for killing blue states. Accountability has never really been his brand, so that tracks. But afterward, radio silence. Instead, he sent out the usual cast of loyal defenders to do the media round. Pam Bondi popped up praising the Dow and declaring the economy booming.
These are the kinds of things they want to say he's racist. He really just loves Americans and is trying to protect families.
Ainsley, as you know, he loves America. President Trump has made America safe again, and that's what he's doing. And in turn, that makes Americans feel safe to go to work, to have jobs, to be able to go to church, to be able to function in our country and be safe. And that's what's driving our economy. Donald Trump making America safe. And that's why our economy is at a record high. We all know that, and it's safe. And, you know, we also had last night there Andy Wolf, and I've gotten to be very close with his mom, Melody. And you know something else, Ainsley, you'll appreciate this, what President Trump said, what's very different. We are a praying administration.
I loved that.
We all are. Our cabinet prayed before we went out there last night. We prayed for the president.
Amazing.
We prayed for Congress. We prayed for the country. And that's because of Donald Trump. And that's what's making America safe.
According to her, everything is thriving, America is safer than ever, and it's all thanks to Trump. She even emphasized that the administration prayed before the speech, as if GDP growth is now powered by group devotion. But here's what didn't get that same glowing spin. A January 4 memo from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche surfaced, instructing officials reviewing Epstein-related documents to specifically flag FBI 302 reports. Those are summaries of witness interviews. Why does that matter? Because those 302s include interviews with survivors. And some of those survivors have made serious accusations involving Trump from decades ago. Congress had set a December 19 deadline for transparency under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Yet, weeks later, there's a memo instructing special handling of exactly the type of documents people were expecting to see. That's not a great look. Meanwhile, Jim Jordan was on TV calling the speech as American as apple pie.
First, give us your sense of the president's speech last night.
His apple pie. I mean, he would Congressional Medals of Freedom, Congressional Medals of Honor, Olympic gold medals, Purple Heart. It was as apple pie and patriotic as I've ever seen. The only one that compares, and Kevin and I have been to a lot of these, last night's I think was the best one I've ever been to. But when you go back a few years ago when the First Lady gave Rush the Medal of Freedom, that was a special night as well. But last night I thought was even better. I mean, the hockey team there, it was as apple pie as you get. And I always say
Kevin McCarthy nodded along. Apparently, we all watched different speeches. According to them, it was historic. Inspirational. Possibly carved into Mount Rushmore as we speak. And then there's the Iran messaging. 1 minute we're told everything was obliterated. The next minute we're back to warnings about imminent nuclear threats and peace through strength.
Ominous, Leader Thune. And folks are wondering after this briefing, are we going to war?
I don't know the answer to that, Aisha. I think that the president is preparing us to defend America's vital national security interests, both in that region and here at home. I mean, we cannot tolerate a nuclear Iran. He made that clear in his speech last night. I think that's something, I hope at least, that big majority of Americans agree with. But we have vital interests in that region, and obviously the capabilities that the Iranians have to hit a lot of our allies in the region is something that we have to be well attuned to as well. And I think the president is pursuing peace through strength by ensuring that America has the right assets in the right places at the right time, if necessary. Hopefully it won't be necessary. If the Iranians come to the table, I think there's potentially a deal that could be made there.
The American public, meanwhile, is asking for affordable groceries and healthcare. It's hard to get excited about another foreign policy drumbeat when rent is due. On the economic front, the spin continues. When confronted with actual GDP data showing stronger growth under Biden, Trump allies just flat out deny it. Inflation trends? Denied. Poll numbers? Blamed on Biden.
Previous economy under Joe Biden, we all know that was a terrible economy for everybody. Everybody was suffering in America.
You brought up GDP growth. Inflation was higher, but GDP growth was also higher during the Biden administration than certainly it was last quarter and the average of year to year. But Congressman, I do want to ask you about...
That's not true, but okay.
GDP growth? You can go check GDP growth. I mean, you can say what you want about inflation, but the GDP is what the GDP was. GDP growth last quarter was 1.4%.
John, here's what I will tell you. Under Joe Biden's economy, wages adjusted for inflation were down in America. I mean, families were falling behind left and right. 13 months with Donald Trump back on the job, wages adjusted for inflation.
To the issue that might clip this administration, and that's the economy. On screen now, we can show you three of the most recent polls about the economy, how about Americans are feeling about it. Everything in red. Our Fox polling disapproves at 59%, Washington Post, ABC News 57%, Wall Street Journal at 54%. It seems like you're pushing a car uphill. And you've got 9 months to turn it around. You know Democrats are juiced. They are ready to vote tomorrow. Do you have enough runway to get this economy where it needs to be before November?
Well, Bill, in some ways, we are pushing a car uphill because the Biden administration left us such a disaster of an economy, the highest peacetime debt in American history, skyrocketing inflation. A lot of Americans who had lost $3,000 was that how much the average American had lost in take-home pay. Now, in a year, we've actually seen the average American gain about $1,200 in take-home pay. But if you're sitting at home from the perspective of the Biden administration, you are still worse off than you were when Joe Biden took over. So we are absolutely pushing that car up.
It's like reality has to pass a loyalty test before being acknowledged. Even JD Vance, when faced with sinking approval numbers on the economy, framed it as pushing a car uphill because of the previous administration. After more than a year back in power, everything is still someone else's fault. And then we get to trade policy. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer started floating the idea that tariffs on Canada could rise maybe even as high as 50% globally in certain cases.
Senator Greer, can we just ask you, what's the status of talks with Canada right now?
So right now with Canada, they have a new chief negotiator that will meet our chief negotiator. I'm in contact with Dominic LeBlanc, who's Minister of Commerce in Canada. We keep in contact. They express an interest in having some kind of alternative deal. Right now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're quite focused on reshoring supply chains related to automotive, steel, and aluminum. We shipped 300,000 metric tons of steel more last year than we did the year before. We made more steel than Japan did last year for the first time in decades. That's what we're focused on. If Canada wants to come in and participate in this type of reshoring we're trying to do, we're happy to have those discussions.
What do you mean by that, participate in the reshoring? What do you mean?
Well, what I will say is when we go to other countries and we make a deal with them, the other countries, they agree that we can have a tariff on them, that we can have a protective tariff to protect our industries as we try to reshore, and they open their markets to us. If Canada wants to agree that we can have some level of higher tariff on them while they open up their markets to us and things like dairy and other things, then that's a helpful conversation. we have very open lines of communication. We'll keep talking. I tend to try not to negotiate in the press or anything like that, and we have discussions ongoing. So if something happens, I'll let you know.
But isn't the point of USMCA so there aren't tariffs? Isn't that the point of USMCA?
The concern about USMCA is that when we put it into effect, the hope was that there would be more critical supply chains reshort to the United States. There'd be more U.S. content. We actually ended up seeing cars increase from Mexico and that kind of thing. There's a lot of good in the deal, but there are a lot of things where reshoring didn't happen fast enough. U.S. content didn't happen fast enough. We think that if we want to have that deal, you need to have better rules, stricter rules to make sure that there's more U.S. content in what we have. We don't want a situation where countries like Vietnam or China can send a bunch of stuff to Canada, do a screwdriver operation, and send it across the border to the United States duty-free, right? And we know that Canada has talked about having closer ties, economic ties with China. I don't want a situation where Canada is being used as a backdoor for Chinese goods. I mean, there are a lot of issues like that would have to be resolved.
Mr. Beard, can I ask you about these?
With their deals.
One analyst was saying that Section 338 could be used, that you could actually go all the way up to 50% in terms of tariffs there based on that legal authority. Is that on the table?
So that legal authority is about 100 years old. It's still good law. We've looked at that. We think that could be helpful in specific circumstances. That law focuses on when countries discriminate against the U.S. relative to other countries. And a lot of countries have the same tariffs toward other countries, or they have the same policy across countries. So you have to look at a really specific instance where the U.S. is discriminated against relative to a third country. And I think there are probably going to be instances where that matter. But I think the Section 301 investigations and then the Section 232 investigations that the Commerce Department has, these are areas where we can have very durable investigations, very durable tariffs where necessary, and they've stood up to legal scrutiny in the past, and they will again.
Now, if you're talking about excess.
That's awkward considering the USMCA, the successor to NAFTA that Trump himself renegotiated, was designed as a free trade agreement. Free trade. Not free trade, but with surprise tariffs. Canada apparently is now being warned not to become a backdoor for Chinese goods. The logic seems to be open your markets to us, accept our tariffs, and call it partnership. It's an interesting negotiation strategy. So here we are, a shaky State of the Union, a silent president, surrogates flooding the airwaves with praise, economic numbers debated like their opinions, transparency questions around sensitive files, and new tariff threats tossed into the mix. If this was meant to reassure the country, it didn't land that way for a lot of people. But hey, maybe gripping the podium was the metaphor. Let me know what you think.